the first Earth Day, and still counting. On April 22, 1970, the first Earth Day, I was a student in Mr. Osborne's 5th grade class at Sherwood Elementary. Between the Vietnam War and the dawning awareness of environmental degradation in the late 1960s, sometimes the world seemed a pretty dark place. But in Mr. Osborne's 5th grade class, we students felt the hopefulness of a world blooming with new and exciting possibilities. Under Mr. Osborne's gifted teaching, we engaged with important social events of the times in our own youthful way. The first Earth Day was organized by Wisconsin Senator Gaylord Nelson to bring national attention to the growing problems of environmental degradation through grassroots actions focused on issues in local communities. On Earth Day, people were asked to demonstrate care for an Earth whose gifts of clean air, water, and soil could no longer be taken for granted. Earth Day would not only create awareness of the steadily declining health of the environment, but bring hope of a better future for the planet. Our 5th grade class decided to join the first Earth Day celebration by turning the hard dirt outside our classroom into a beautiful garden of grass and flowers. All it would take, we thought, were some shovels and a few seeds. On April 22nd, we showed up with tools, the girls wearing pants, which wasn't normally allowed, and worked like crazy all day to get that small square of soil ready for the plants we imagined would grow there. Mr. Osborne even let me run the block home for my wagon to haul away rocks and trash. With rakes and hoes in our young hands, we scratched tiny furrows in the soil to plant our hopeful seeds. A little water, a little weeding, and we'd have our first Earth Day garden. At the end of the day, we were dirty and tired, but proud to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Around the world, 20 million participants representing thousands of schools and communities organized events like ours, from planting trees to picking up trash along highways, in what Senator Nelson called a spontaneous response at the grassroots level. Earth Day proved that many people did care about the environment, becoming a symbol for the new ecological movement that seemed to promise cleaner air and water, healthier food, more prudent use of natural resources, and more diligent preservation of wilderness. 36 years later, I produced a digital story about our Earth Day project to commemorate that time as one seed of my environmental advocacy. After I finished the video, I decided to send it to Mr. Osborne to let him know how much he had influenced my ecological activism. I wasn't certain he was still living, but I found his name in the directory, sent off the DVD, and kept my fingers crossed. 3 weeks after I mailed my package, I was thrilled to receive a letter from my 5th grade teacher. Amazingly, he remembered me after decades of teaching hundreds of students. But that's the kind of teacher he was. Mr. Osborne made each student feel important because to him, they were. We continued to correspond, and I visited him at his home, where he joked in his familiar way about retirement and getting older. He was the same teacher he had always been, enthusiastic about my pursuits, and inspiring as a role model who filled his life with new interests after a long career in teaching. Too soon after we reunited, Mr. Osborne passed away. At his memorial service, I spoke of how Mr. Osborne inspired us to engage with the important issues of our time. I said that exceptional teachers like him stand as guideposts for their students who continue to live those lessons every day. As I looked across the sanctuary full of teachers, I saw teary eyes and nods from those who had watched their own students grow. I asked everyone to commemorate Mr. Osborne's Earth Day lessons by planting a tree on the approaching 40th anniversary of Earth Day. We planted one at Stonebridge, an opalescent apple tree to remember Mr. O, as he was often called. At the planting, I read Rilke's poem, The Apple Orchard, which speaks of an apple tree's strength to bear a heavy load of apples on its branches without breaking, almost past endurance. The poem's last line described Mr. O's teaching as well. Thus must it be, when willingly you strive throughout a long and uncomplaining life committed to one goal, to give yourself, and silently to grow and to bear fruit. Like a sturdy and steadfast apple tree, Mr. O committed himself to his students, the fruit that he helped nurture in a world just beginning to realize the threats to its ecological systems. Today, Earth Day and its message of stewardship are still part of many school curriculums. Children learn about the value of recycling, saving energy, and protecting endangered species. Since the first Earth Day, the public has pushed the government and industries to enact stricter standards for air and water pollution, make cars more fuel efficient, and recover many contaminated areas. But 4 decades after the first Earth Day, we are living that fearful future of vanishing species, toxic food, oil spills, nuclear disasters, and climate change-amplified weather crises. In 5th grade, I believed that solutions to the world's environmental problems would be achieved in my lifetime. How naive I was to underestimate the economic forces that value profit over preservation and the lack of political will to challenge them. The view that the earth is only ours for the harvesting has led us to disregard its limitations. Certainly, we should all participate in green efforts to plant school gardens, recycle our cans and bottles, or eat locally grown organic vegetables as ways to honor the earth as our home. Yet actions like these alone will not save the planet from environmental devastation. The changes needed to stop further ecological damage are monumental, not only for the policies required, but for the political will necessary to institute them. And our individual efforts so small, it's hard to see how the tiny seeds of stewardship planted so many years ago can still grow. Like Mr. Osborne, John and I are teachers, so one of our missions at Stonebridge is to educate about the important place of organic food production in a healthy community and a healthy planet. We routinely welcome students of all ages to learn more about community-supported agriculture and sustainable farming methods by working with us at the farm. We want to help students think about the future of food in both globalized and local food systems, and to understand the trade-offs between an agricultural efficiency model, with its chemical dependency, monocropping, monopoly of food and seed production, and externalizing of environmental and health costs, and an ecology model, organic pest management, crop diversity, small-scale local control of resources, and preservation of clean water, air, and soil for the health of the planet and all its inhabitants. While we chat and work with our hands in the soil, we ask the students to consider the costs, economic, environmental, and social, of eating oranges in Colorado in the winter, and our willingness and ability to pay for them. The students think for a moment and then start listing chemicals to grow them blemish-free in monocultured pesticide-maintained orchards, hybridization for uniform shape and size, and fossil fuels to transport them. On the other hand, jobs provided by a citrus industry dependent on export, the health benefits of oranges, and their integration into U.S. cuisine. John and I are old enough to remember the song touting orange juice with natural vitamin C from the Florida sunshine tree. Yet many vegetables like kale that can be grown locally in varied climates contain as much vitamin C as oranges. Where's the jingle for that? The students shake their heads at the idea of a glass of kale juice in the morning. They'll probably continue to eat oranges in the winter, but with a little more thought of the trade-offs involved. One weekend, our friend brought 4 students from her college sustainability class to help us weed the newly emerging spinach and carrot beds. As we worked with hose and hories in the soft spring sun, one young man, a former student in John's calculus class, asked me what my favorite thing was at the farm. Besides John, I teased him. I have so many favorites here, I had to think a bit. The most obvious answer was community, but I thought he was asking for something more prosaic than that. The flowers, I said, and the chickens because they're so friendly. From the student's laugh, I don't think he'd ever heard before that chickens are friendly. After we finished weeding, we picked radishes for everyone to take home. I told the students they could eat some as they picked. "Is this what a radish tastes like?" one asked in wonder. "I've never tasted one like this before." "That's because," another friend said, "you can't get a fresh radish at a grocery store. Not fresh like this, anyway." "Fresh is a flavor," I told them. "This is what fresh tastes like." When we moved to the spinach bed, another student declined the offer of spinach. "I don't like spinach," she assured us. "Just try a leaf, okay?" She tentatively chewed a piece and then smiled. "This is spinach? Okay, I'll take some." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. How sad for 18-year-olds, from middle-class families who generally have access to raw vegetables in stores, not to know the taste of fresh vegetables, especially ones they've picked themselves. A salad bar may be the closest they come, and that is just not the same as harvesting a carrot right out of the garden or getting fresh spinach as part of a CSA share. Food and the choices we make about it are woven into the fabric of our everyday lives, yet our decision-making is often reduced to what we feel like eating in a marketplace of ready-to-go food. Where food comes from and the conditions in which it's grown, harvested, prepared, marketed, and sold are of lesser concern to most people each day. The reasons for this lack of knowledge are complex, and the factors to weigh in food choices overwhelming. But at least at Stonebridge, students encounter one other way to look at food, fresh from farm to table, from plant to plate, from soil to mouth. Many years will pass before Mr. O's tree bears fruit in the old orchard at the edge of the farm, just as many years have passed since I first planted my first Earth Day garden. When I tend that tree, I remember how Mr. O inspired us to care about the natural world by getting our hands in the soil. He taught us the Earth Day lesson of working together to care for our environment by visualizing the world in which we wanted to live. Even though the grass and flowers didn't survive long in the high-traffic area outside our schoolroom, it didn't matter. The real seeds had been planted in us. At Stonebridge, we celebrate Earth Day each year by planting a tree. But we know that planting trees on one day of the year is not enough to stop the ecological destruction that threatens all our lives. We must also join others in insisting that the environment not only be protected for ourselves, but for generations farther than we can count. It's not easy to celebrate Earth Day each year, as news about nuclear disasters, oil spills, genetically modified crops, and contamination of land and water with oil and gas production fill our media spaces. As part of an organic farm, John and I and our members worry about agricultural losses from many different directions: land lost to development, crops lost to contamination from drift of pesticides or genetically modified organisms, and, increasingly, water lost from human-made global warming and drought. But despite these concerns, apple trees continue to bear fruit, trees go on leafing, and the air after a rain still smells good. As farmers, consumers, and activists, we all keep going in the knowledge that the cycles of our seasons will continue, and the hope that our best efforts will yield exactly what we need. Together, we must create a new vision that inspires fresh seeds of environmental activism, one that looks not only at individual acts, but also at collective intervention in the mounting crisis of our only Earth.